So, is Djokovic's career on the decline? Well, the answer to this question is yes. In this video, we'll try to look at the reasons and factors that have led to this decline, the facts and figures that prove that yes, Djokovic is struggling right now, and the changes or solutions that he need to put in his game to improve and possibly win another Grand Slam. So let's get started. I think it all started for Djokovic last year, and it's ironic because Djokovic's career rose when he won the Davis Cup for Serbia in 2010, towards the end of 2010, and he has mentioned it a lot of times that that clearly changed his career. He then also improved on his diet, his nutrition, and his physicality changed. And from 2011 onwards, we know another type of Djokovic that we hadn't seen before. Similarly, last year's Davis Cup, Djokovic was going in full flow. He had won the world number one ranking again. He had won against Alcaraz and Sinner back to back at the O2, the World Tour finals, playing amazing tennis, and it looked like Djokovic is still the player to beat. But Davis Cup changed it all. He was playing well. He had three match points against Sinner on Sinner's serve. It was love 40, and had Djokovic converted one of them, Davis Cup again would have gone to Serbia. I feel Djokovic would have led them to victory, but it did not happen. Sinner fought hard and he won that match. And after that, it was Italy's title throughout. They played well, whether it was singles, doubles, and I think that hit Djokovic mentally because that was the end of the year, and it gave some time for Djokovic to reflect, but then it also gave time for Djokovic to think about that match because there were no more tournaments after that tournament. So I feel Djokovic hasn't recovered fully from that match, or the start of the struggle started there because in Australia, you see, he played against Sinner again and he did not perform well. He did not perform well throughout the tournament, but against Sinner as well, it was pretty one sided at the Australian Open. And since then, his performances are on the decline. So if you see his performances this year in the United Cup, he lost to Alex de Minaur. He was aiding a wrist injury. In the Australian Open, he lost to Sinner. He struggled throughout the tournament. He was making a lot of unforced errors, not moving that well. In Indian Wells, he again lost to Luca Nardi, who was ranked 123rd back then. In Miami, he did not play, and he did not play in some of the other tournaments as well, citing that he needs time to work on his game. He also needs some family time, and he would focus only on big tournaments. In Rome, on clay, he lost to Tabilo. In Geneva Open, he tried to gain some more match practice, but again lost there. At the French Open, he withdrew in the quarterfinals, we all know, due to the meniscus tear, and then he had the surgery. In Wimbledon, he struggled in a few matches, but then again he lost to Alcaraz yesterday in what was the best performance of Alcaraz we have seen so far. So if you look at all these performances, Djokovic hasn't won a tournament this year, and he has lost to not only the top players but also top 10 players or top 100 players, which means that he's not performing at his own level. And that is what proves that he's basically on the decline, and he needs to change a few things and get some important matches under his belt to gain that confidence back. Now, the factors and reasons that show a decline, I mean to say, I feel he's not moving as well as he used to. That could be because of the injury, that could be because of his age. But I feel that if you compare the matches from yesterday against Alcaraz to the last year's match against Alcaraz at Wimbledon, you can clearly see whenever Alcaraz hit a drop shot last year or he was hitting a drop volley, Djokovic was very quick to get to that. And in yesterday's match, sometimes he did not even attempt to get to that ball, and sometimes he got there but could not control the ball. So there is a remarkable difference there, and I feel that has happened throughout this year. He is not moving well, and I feel that needs to change because that is his forte. That's the most important part of his game. That is the movement. Now he's not Federer, who could just serve well, hit an aggressive forehand, and finish the point at the net. He can do that, Djokovic, but that's not his natural game. So when he's under pressure or when he doesn't have a clear strategy, naturally he would go to his normal game, which is to play from the baseline. He might try and serve and volley, but then he might not be able to execute it because it's not his natural game. He has made a lot of uncharacteristic unforced errors, specifically in the tie breaks and on important points, which we are not used to see from Djokovic. And another reason for the decline is the rise of Sinner and Alcaraz. Now, these two players do not have any weaknesses. They are playing well. They have won Grand Slams. So it's very difficult for Djokovic to win without playing his best tennis. And that is another reason why we see his performance in the tournaments taking a downturn. Now, the possible solutions and changes that Djokovic could apply is pretty obvious. He needs to work on his fitness levels. He's recovering from an injury right now, so that will take some time. But I feel he should get more matches. He should play the tournaments, even though he is focusing more on Grand Slams. But he should still participate, even if he's not winning, so that he gets the practice, the pressure points, the tie breaks, and he gets his mojo back in those sort of moments. And I feel he needs to be more aggressive when I compare him to Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal. Now, both these players, now the best example is Rafael Nadal, right? His natural game was to play from the baseline, but as his career progressed and he got older, we know how he changed his tactic. He played really aggressive, and that is the main reason he was able to win a few US Open titles towards the end of his career, because he was just playing very aggressive first strike tennis, moving to the net and finishing the point. That is something which I would like to see from Djokovic as well, even though it's not natural for him, but he needs to be aggressive and try to play the first strike tennis. So he needs to be the aggressor, he needs to be the first one to initiate an aggressive play and then try to finish the point. Now, having said that, because Djokovic's defense is so good, his movement is so good, and he is good from both the wings, whether it's forehand or backhand, he needs to have that plan B as well. If the plan A is not working, if he's making a lot of errors when he's trying to go for winners, he needs to have that plan B to play from the baseline and try to wear the opponent out. That is also important. And obviously, he can look at Roger and Rafa for motivation. Even if they were not winning, they were still playing well and trying their best to change their tactics. We know how Roger introduced the saber shot just to counter Djokovic. Even though he was losing most of the times against Djokovic, he was still trying his best, and eventually, he won another Grand Slam and a few more tournaments. So that is what I think Djokovic should hope for and aim for, to win another Grand Slam and try to play well. As long as he is losing only against Alcaraz or Sinner, and he is able to play well and make it a close match, 4 sets or 5 sets, I think he will still believe that he can continue and he'll get his chance once or twice to win the Grand Slams. But if he's losing against players who are not Sinner and Alcaraz, then I think he needs to change some tactics in his game and decide on his career as well. I also feel that he needs to hire a coach to get technical feedback and build strategy for key matches. Having a coach always helps, because sometimes the players are too close to it and they don't have time to do all sorts of analysis. So I feel that having a coach would definitely help against matches against Sinner and Alcaraz. I feel that some parts of his game need improvement, which is the slice down the line. We know that Sinner and Alcaraz are able to do that, but I think Djokovic should also be able to do it. He has that game, and using that down the line slice or the backhand down the line in general will help him maneuver the opponent and will help him stay in the point longer, and it will also help him to be aggressive. Now, one thing which Djokovic usually doesn't do is take the ball on the rise. We know that how Nadal and Federer have been able to do that, especially towards the latter stages of their career. I think Djokovic also needs to improve on that, take time away from the opponent, because if you give time to Alcaraz and Sinner to set up their shot, they can be really aggressive and finish the point. So Djokovic may need to work on that aspect as well. Now, whatever I have mentioned, it's just shown in the screenshot. So if you can see, what I mean by first strike tennis is that from this point onwards, you can see Djokovic has an option to go inside out as well as on down the line. He has the ball in his hitting zone. Now, from here, if Djokovic is not able to win the point, then it's really dangerous. And the way Djokovic needs to win this point is to be really aggressive with whatever direction he chooses, and then he needs to go to the net. If the approach shot is not good enough, if he is imparting too much topspin or keeping the ball short, then it's not going to be enough against Alcaraz and Sinner. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't need to go for these shots. He has to go for these shots. If he stays in the rally and just puts the ball back and waits for the opponent to miss, that's not going to work, especially against Alcaraz and Sinner. So the first strike tennis, when he puts a first serve in, Alcaraz and Sinner are good readers of his serve. They can return well, but they won't hit a winner on the return if it's a good serve. They would probably hit a return that would land up here, as seen in this picture, and then Djokovic needs to take control. Now, earlier in his career, he did not take this control. He tried to dictate play from the baseline, rally well, and if he gets a really short ball, he would attack. Otherwise, he would just wait for the opponent to miss, right? But that strategy will not work going forward because he is getting older. His movement is not there as it used to be. He is recovering from an injury, as well as the other players such as Sinner and Alcaraz are too quick for Djokovic to play that sort of game. So he needs to ensure that when he gets this ball in the striking zone, he needs to be the first player to make that move and get to the net. Another tactic or another area of improvement for Djokovic would be the forecourt. Now, as we can see here, Alcaraz has just made a chip return on Djokovic's serve. Now, this ball lands just near the baseline and it's a short ball. So Djokovic now needs to attack. As I mentioned, he can go either cross court or down the line with his forehand, but that approach shot needs to be good enough so that he can come to the net and finish the point. In this point, if you see the highlights, what actually happens is Djokovic is not able to control this ball and it sits up very for an easy passing shot for Alcaraz, and Alcaraz wins this point. So these sort of points would be common going forward because Alcaraz and Sinner would try to hit a chip return, would try to return short to Djokovic and just to see how Djokovic reacts. So it's up to Djokovic to take that shot aggressively and hit a quality approach shot so that he gets an easy volley to finish the point. As I mentioned, Djokovic needs to apply the backhand down the line a lot, whether it's the slice or it's the normal ground stroke, it doesn't matter. But he needs to be able to change directions on the ball. So that's where I mentioned plan B. If his plan A is not working, if he's not able to play aggressively from the baseline and hit winners, it's okay. He can still use his slice, but it needs to be direction oriented so that he is able to control the point from there. Now, the three conditions where Djokovic can win another Grand Slam. The first one is obviously if he raises his level, if he plays 90 to 100% of his level and applies the correct strategy against Sinner and Alcaraz. Now, this is less likely to happen because he is already 37 and he's recovering from injury. So it's hard for him to get back to 100%, but it is possible if he works hard, as he mentioned in his press conference that he will learn from this and try to work on his game. The second condition is if he doesn't need to play Alcaraz or Sinner in the journey of a Grand Slam. It's also possible that the draw supports him. Alcaraz and Sinner are in the same half of the draw as they were in Wimbledon, and Alcaraz was close to losing a few times in this year's tournament. If that would have happened, Djokovic would have got a chance to win this Grand Slam. So similar things can happen in the future as well. The third condition is when Sinner and Alcaraz are having an off day against him. So if Djokovic is playing around 80 to 90% of his level and Sinner and Alcaraz are not having a good day, then also Djokovic can win. So I feel these are the three conditions and any of these can happen. But time will tell how it goes from here on in. So Djokovic really has a lot of work to do on his hands. He is capable of doing that. So let's hope that he recovers well and plays well in the upcoming tournaments. So that's the analysis, guys. Thanks for watching.